And there he sits, P.T. Barnum. Hey over there, Joe Lunchbox.
And Joy Nightingale.
And today we have landed right here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Now, sitting behind us on that big chair in that monument is the one and only P.T. Barnum, famed, I want to say, showman of the 19th century. Lived from 1810 into the 1891. And today we're going to go around Bridgeport, Connecticut and show you some sites that have to do about him, stuff that ties into the life of P.T. Barnum, and talk more about the man. So hopefully you're intrigued and you want to learn about that. So step right up. Let's go for this ride. So P.T. Barnum, obviously, like I was saying, is known as the greatest showman of the 19th century. It's a crazy thing. He started by opening up sort of like museums in New York City, showing off oddities and stuff like that, and brought you art, brought you opera singers of Europe, people that look different than you and I, and that people were intrigued to learn about. And later in life, actually almost in retirement age, at the age of 60, he decided, you know what, I'm going to open a circus. We'll go over all this stuff, but one of the important things to him always was the town of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And that's where we're standing, and that's why they put this monument here for one P.T. Barnum. And what's interesting is the park that this monument is set in was actually land that P.T. Barnum owned, and he donated this land to the city in 1865 so they could build this park. Bridgeport was always important to him. It wasn't his birth town, but he lived here a good chunk of his life, and he was actually even the mayor of this town for 2 terms. On Main Street in Bridgeport is the Barnum Museum. Now, this museum has been a staple of this community for many years. In fact, a few weeks before Barnum passed away, the plans were finally finalized for this museum. He donated a lot of the money for the museum and also the land for this museum, and it cost $85,000 to build. Now, it was initially, I don't know if we can see it up top, Barnum's Institute of Science and History. Now it actually is a museum more about the man, P.T. Barnum, Phineas Taylor Barnum, that is. But I like things that are weird and odd. Now, this museum, me and Joy came here, I want to say around like 2004, 2005, but it's been closed for many years now. They're still renovating it, making it structurally sound, because in 2010, a tornado came through Bridgeport, Connecticut. I don't hear of tornadoes usually on the East Coast, damaging the structural integrity of the building. Then Hurricane Irene and Superstorm Sandy also did some damage, so they still are renovating it. But we're not only here to talk about this museum, we're here to talk about P.T. Barnum. And talking about museums, when he was born in 1810. In 1841, he purchased Scooter's American Museum on Broadway in New York City and renamed it the Barnum American Museum. And that was the start of his career, let's say, in being a showman, performing, and not really performing, but presenting to the world, let's say. He's done other things, but I feel that was a big step. He took this museum, put a lighthouse light on the roof to attract people, filled it with some oddities, some people from all around the world, and really started growing it. Art collections, trying to bring culture to New York City and to America. Taking a second to notice all the stonework on this building. See the reliefs going around. Something big is coming. The Barnum Museum. I can't wait for it to reopen. And this building is actually on the National Register of Historic Places. Really see all the detail. Every little corner of this building has all this design intricately placed in the stonework. On the corner of Park and Fairfield here in Bridgeport, there is this mermaid statue. It actually has nothing to do about P.T. Barnum, but there is a reason we want to show it. This is actually the Nathaniel Wheeler Memorial Fountain. But the reason we wanted to show this fountain is in 1842, at the Barnum American Museum in New York City, Barnum unveiled something new the people couldn't believe. He had a Fiji mermaid. Now, as we all know, this was a hoax. It was just a taxidermy, half fish, half mermaid, but it was the talk of the town back then, and no one could believe it. So when I heard there was a mermaid statue here in town, we had to come see the mermaid statue, or Mermaid Fountain. It's not going now, so I'm saying statue. And that was one of the first hoax that P.T. Barnum did. Even though he says it wasn't really meant to be a hoax, it was just to get people in the door. He also did stuff like, we showed you up in the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, the Cardiff Giant. And then we showed you how P.T. Barnum copied the Cardiff Giant. He had his own, and we showed you that copy at Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum. We'll put the links to both of those down below. But those were hoaxes that came after this. But there's actually some interesting history about this fountain here as well. You see, this fountain was sculpted by the same man, Gutzon Borglum, who made Mount Rushmore. And when he was making Mount Rushmore, he actually passed away in the middle of making it, and his son took over. And his son that took over, they said he was actually baptized in this fountain.
I think it's Ursula's little, I don't know what they're called.
We're trying to figure out what these things are. Joy's saying it's those poor unfortunate souls that worked with Ursula, but I don't know if that's what this is.
It's a good thought.
We have some other things like another little kid mermaid here, which the hose coming out of his mouth right now is pretty disturbing. It looks like he has a feeding tube in. Looks like someone just pulled the hose out from him. I figure this is probably where the pump is for the fountain. It's funny that they're hiding it under this fake rock, and you realize it's fake rock because the locks. Yep, definitely plastic. And this fountain was erected in 1912. Behind us right now is the Klein Memorial Auditorium now. That building per se isn't important. What is important, on this road here, Fairfield Avenue, this is around where P.T. Barnum built his first house here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It was actually called Iranistan. Now, this was the first of 4 houses he did build here. The sad thing is, this one, on December 18th, 1857, he had a rule. You can't smoke in his house. Mm-hmm. But when he was in there, some construction workers were smoking, and they burnt the whole house to the ground. And like I said, it was still his hometown, not birth town, but this is the town he called home. He did travel abroad and live in New York City here and there and Europe. But he did build 3 more houses here in Bridgeport. And we're going to show you a photo of that house look like. Here we have a postcard of what Iranistan would have looked like, his first of those 4 houses here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It really was beautiful. We find ourselves now at the Mount Grove Cemetery because you can't talk about P.T. Barnum without talking about General Tom Thumb, also known by his real name as Charles Sherwood Stratton. Now, we came here to see his grave just so we get a little backstory of who General Tom Thumb was. He was a man of a smaller stature. So Tom Thumb was born January 4th, 1838, here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He actually surprisingly was a quite large baby. He was a big baby. He weighed 9 pounds 8 ounces. Just think, when I was born, I was only 8 pounds 1 ounce. But at 6 months, his family realized he wasn't really growing that much. And because of his smaller stature, in 1843, P.T. Barnum started taking Tom Thumb, and they were touring. And they toured US, they toured Europe, even met with Queen Victoria. And now, just think though, we're talking he was born 1838. In 1843, he was only 5 years old. But they were pitching him to be an 11-year-old. And P.T. Barnum taught him how to sing, dance, pantomime. He would impersonate people like Napoleon. And around that age of 5, they had him drinking wine so he looked older. Around the age of 7, he was smoking cigars. And Tom Thumb grew to great fame, great success. In fact, that when he got married in 1863 to Lavina Warren, they got married in New York City. They stood upon a grand piano to say hi to their 10,000 guests. Even Abraham Lincoln sent gifts. The President of the United States sent gifts to Tom Thumb. Sadly, Tom didn't live that old. He passed away at 44 years old due to a stroke. And they said his funeral actually had 20,000 people. Now, it's a beautiful memorial they have. Supposedly the Tom Thumb on top, the statue of him, is life-size. And sadly, in 1959, some vandals broke that statue, but the Barnum Association and foundations for it helped restore the statue. And right from Tom Thumb's grave, we just turn around and we have P.T. Barnum's grave. We're going to walk over there and see that. And now we have the grave or plot of the man himself, Phineas T. Barnum, P.T. Barnum. It's like we were talking about him earlier throughout this video. We learned about his museums, how he brought us people like Tom Thumb. But we all know him, I feel personally, from growing up, me and Joy, kids of the 80s, going to the world's greatest show, Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus. Now, like I was saying, after taking Tom Thumb around and doing other stuff, he brought us so much more stuff. He brought us Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale. Not us, I mean America, back in the 1800s. He toured with the Swedish Nightingale in 1850, 1851, introducing her to America. Later in the 60s, Chang and Ang, what I feel is one of the most famous conjoined twins, came out of retirement and did a 6-week stint with him. In 62, he discovered the giantess Anna Swan, and another person with a smaller stature, Commodore Nutt, who some people said was his new Tom Thumb at that time. And the crazy thing, like I was saying, is it wasn't until he was 60 years old that he developed the P.T. Barnum Greatest Show on Earth, his first circus. In 1881, he merged with James Bailey to form Barnum and Bailey's, which started actually the world's first three-wing circus, and also the first circus to move by train. Now the actual grave of the man himself, P.T. Barnum. Died April 7th, 1891. The age of 80 years old. Now, his legacy obviously has lived on. There's museums here. The circus sadly just shut down a few years ago. And obviously, Barnum and Bailey's grew into something else. In 1907, Ringling Brothers bought Barnum and Bailey, and then that led to the circus that we all know today. But we wanted to come out and pay our tributes to the showman of the 1800s, P.T. Barnum. And he's buried here with his first wife, Charity, who died November 19th, 1873. He married a few months after that to a woman a lot younger than him. And then also his daughter is also buried here with him. So there you have it. The life and death of one P.T. Barnum. And we also did visit the grave of Tom Thumb. Living in New York, Bridgeport, Connecticut is very close to us. Being a fans of Sideshow, we obviously grew up loving the circus, so I figured we should come out, pay our respects, see what there is to see about P.T. Barnum, and there you have it. We got to see some memorials, some museums, and his grave. So I think we could call it Joy.
And a mermaid that wasn't from Fiji.
And a mermaid. Yeah, that mermaid wasn't from Fiji. P.T. Barnum's grave, Tom Thumb's grave, and some stuff about P.T. Barnum here around Bridgeport, Connecticut. Been there, done that. Remember, folks, safe travels.
Good eats.
And live life. Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus. Rawr, make sure you subscribe to Joe and Joy have landed. And like this video and leave a comment.